Okay, so have you ever, imagined a world where scientists could just, churn out these groundbreaking discoveries?
Like they had some sort of secret weapon or something?
Exactly. Like on hyperspeed.
Yeah, I can see that. Some kind of super-powered research lab.
Well, get this. There's this team, right, it's called Sakana AI, and they're working with some universities.
Uh-huh.
And they've created this thing called the AI scientist.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild. We're going to be diving deep into their research paper today.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, so the paper, it's called the AI Scientist, Towards Fully Automated, Open-Ended Scientific Discovery. And it came out pretty recently, September 2024.
Oh, very new research then.
Yeah.
So what's the big idea here? AI that can do science. What does that even mean?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. It's kind of mind-blowing. This AI, it's not just helping scientists, that's actually, doing the science itself.
Wait, hold on. Doing the science itself, you mean it's designing experiments, analyzing data?
You got it. Yeah, from start to finish. It can even write the whole research paper.
Whoa, okay, that's next level. I'm definitely intrigued.
So the paper breaks it down into 3 phases, right? The first one is idea generation.
Idea generation. So the AI comes up with the research ideas.
Yep, and it's not just random ideas. It uses this, evolutionary algorithm. They call it, survival of the fittest, but for scientific ideas.
Survival of the fittest for ideas. That's a pretty cool way to put it.
Right. So it starts with a bunch of ideas, and then it kind of tests them out and keeps refining the best ones, just like in evolution.
I see. So it's constantly improving and evolving the ideas based on their potential.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
Okay. So then we go to phase 2, which is experiment iteration.
Okay, so this is where it actually gets its hands dirty.
Literally. This is where the AI takes those ideas that, survived,
Yeah.
and it turns them into, actual code for experiments.
No way. So it's coding up the experiments and then, running them, collecting data.
All of it. And get this, it even keeps an experimental journal, like a real scientist.
Oh, wow. It's documenting everything it does.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
So it's having, a robotic lab partner that never gets tired, never needs to sleep, always working.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so the experiment's done,
Yeah.
right? What happens next?
Well, I'm assuming it doesn't just dump a bunch of data on the scientists' desks and say, figure it out.
Nope. That would be chaos.
Right.
So that brings us to the final phase, paper write-up.
Paper write-up? Wait, you mean the AI actually writes a full research paper?
The whole thing. Abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, references, the works.
Wow. So it's a one-stop shop for scientific research. But how do we even know if these papers are any good?
Right, good question. Are we talking Nobel Prize material or something that would get, rejected from a high school science fair?
Yeah, exactly.
So to answer that, they actually, they created another AI system.
Another AI.
Yeah, to act as a reviewer. It evaluates the quality and originality of the AI-generated papers.
So it's AI peer review.
Exactly, super meta, right?
Yeah, that's wild.
And the results are pretty surprising. Some of those papers were actually judged to be on par with, the top machine learning conferences.
Oh, wow. So they're actually, legitimate scientific papers.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. I mean, it's kind of, unsettling and impressive at the same time. But think about it. If this really works, what could it mean for the future of research? The paper talks about, democratizing science, making it more accessible to anyone.
Especially because, think about the cost. These papers, they only cost about $15 each to produce.
Yeah, that's insane. Compared to traditional research, that's, nothing.
It could be a total game changer. Imagine, smaller institutions, individuals, they could suddenly have access to, cutting-edge research.
Exactly.
So what kinds of research is this AI scientist actually doing? What kind of papers is it writing?
Okay, so they have some fascinating case studies in the paper. One that stood out to me was, it was called Adaptive Dual-Scale Denoising.
Denoising. Okay, and what's that all about?
So it's about using these things called diffusion models, which are a type of machine learning model, and they use them to remove noise from data.
Noise? What kind of noise? I don't get it.
Well, think about it like this.
Yeah.
Imagine you have a photo, right? And it's all grainy and blurry.
Right.
Denoising is cleaning up that photo, making it sharp and clear. And it's not just for images. It's used in all sorts of things like audio processing, signal processing.
Oh, I see. So it's taking out all the junk that's messing up the data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this adaptive dual-scale denoising paper, it doesn't just present the findings. It also, it suggests new areas for research, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just like reporting on what it found, but it's also like pointing to what we still don't know.
Yep, exactly. And there's another paper they talk about dual diff, which tackles a similar problem, but with a totally different approach.
Oh, so the AI came up with multiple solutions to the same problem.
It's almost like the AI is, thinking like a scientist. It's considering different angles, trying different things.
It's really starting to sound like an actual researcher.
Right. Okay. There's another one I got to tell you about. It's called style fusion.
Style fusion. Okay, now I'm really curious. What's that one about?
This one is all about incorporating style awareness into language models. So, imagine an AI that could write like Shakespeare.
What, like you could write a sonnet?
Yeah. Or like a screenplay in the style of Quentin Tarantino.
That's insane. But what are the actual real world applications of that?
Oh, there are tons. Think about personalized content creation, An AI could write something specifically in your style.
That's pretty cool.
Or imagine, writers who are struggling with writer's block. The AI could help them by suggesting different styles to try out.
Yeah, I can see how that would be super helpful.
But there's a catch. The paper talks about this thing called overfitting, where the AI gets too focused on the data it was trained on and can't really generalize to new stuff.
I see. So it's learned how to mimic certain styles really well, but it can't really go beyond that.
Right. It's like that student who memorizes all the answers for the test but doesn't actually understand the material.
I get it. So even though it's impressive, there are still some limitations.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've seen some of the good stuff. Were there any, epic fails? Any papers where the AI just totally missed the mark?
Well, there were a couple that were a bit, shall we say, unconventional. One was called Adaptive Learning Rates in Transformers via Q-learning. It tried to use this thing called Q-learning, which is like a reinforcement learning technique.
I've heard of Q-learning.
To adjust the learning rate, during the training process.
Yeah.
It was a creative idea, but it didn't really pan out. It was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
So the AI got a little too ambitious, huh?
You could say that.
Yeah.
But it's good that it's experimenting, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's how you learn, by trying new things and, sometimes failing.
Right. And it shows that the AI is not just following a set of rules. It's actually trying to come up with new ideas.
It makes you wonder, what else could it come up with? What other ideas are out there waiting to be discovered?
Exactly. Then there's another one. Impact of weight initialization strategies on grokking.
Grokking? What is grokking?
It's basically this phenomenon where a neural network suddenly, gets it. It just starts understanding things after a long period of, not really doing much.
Huh. So it's like that aha moment when you finally understand a concept you've been struggling with.
Yeah, like a light bulb goes off.
Interesting. And the AI scientist was researching that.
It was looking at how different weight initialization strategies, basically the starting point for the network's learning, affect grokking. But the research didn't really lead to any conclusive results.
Okay, so it's not like the AI is solving all the mysteries of the universe just yet.
Right. But even the fact that it's probing these fundamental questions about how neural networks learn, that's pretty incredible. And then there's another paper?
Another one. There are so many.
Right, I know. It's a lot to take in. This one's called dual diff, and it's similar to that adaptive dual scale denoising paper we talked about.
Oh, the one about cleaning up noisy data.
Yeah, exactly. But dual diff take a totally different approach to solving the same problem.
So it's coming up with multiple ways to tackle the same challenge, just like a human researcher would.
Right. It's amazing. It really is.
But I gotta ask, with all this incredible stuff, are there any limitations to this whole AI scientist approach?
Oh, for sure. There are definitely limitations.
Yeah.
One big one is that the AI is working with a pretty small set of references compared to what a human scientist would use.
So it's like trying to write a novel having only read a few short stories.
Exactly. You're missing a lot of context.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then there's this other thing. The paper talks about how the AI sometimes misinterprets its own results. It'll put a positive spin on things even when the data isn't really that positive.
So it's overly optimistic.
Yeah, you could say that.
I guess it shows that even with all its smarts, the AI is still under development. It needs that human touch to keep it in check.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool, but it's important to remember that it's still a tool. you know?
Right. It needs guidance, direction.
Yep. Human oversight is key. But even with those limitations, I mean, think about the possibilities.
It's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? This is just the beginning.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And we're going to dive even deeper into,
Yeah.
like, the philosophical and ethical side of all this in part 2.
Can't wait. It's going to be a wild ride.
It definitely is. We'll be back soon to explore those big questions, so stay tuned. Well, so we just spent the last, half hour talking about this AI that can write research papers.
Yeah, crazy, right?
It's like, it makes you wonder, like, what does this even mean for science itself? Like, what's the point of human scientists if an AI can do it all?
Yeah, it's a big question, right? Like, are we all going to be out of a job soon?
I know, right? It's kind of scary. But the paper talks about how we should think about it more like a tool.
Yeah,
you know?
Cool.
Like, not a replacement for humans, but something that can, like, help us, augment our abilities.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Like, imagine if scientists didn't have to spend all their time doing boring stuff like, data entry and stuff.
Exactly.
They could focus on the, the big ideas.
The creative stuff.
Yeah. The stuff that AI, can't do.
So it's like a collaboration, right?
Yeah, like a partnership.
Humans and AI working together.
I like that. Like, we each bring our own strengths to the table.
Yeah. And together we can, achieve more than we could on our own.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, imagine what we could do if we had these AI scientists working on problems like, climate change or disease.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It could be a total game changer. And the cool thing is, this AI scientist, it's open source.
Open source?
Yeah, anyone can use it.
Wait, really?
Yep, they've made the code available to everyone.
That's incredible. So, any scientist in the world could potentially, download this and start using it?
Pretty much. Of course, you still need to know, what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's not like you just press a button and boom, research paper.
Okay.
But it's a huge step towards making cutting edge research accessible to everyone.
That's so cool. So you mentioned knowing what you're doing. What kinds of research questions is this AI scientist, good at answering?
Well, right now it seems to be best at machine learning stuff.
That makes sense. Right.
Yeah, since it's built on these, large language models, which are the heart of machine learning.
It's an expert in its own field.
Exactly. But, there's no reason it couldn't be adapted to other fields like biology or physics,
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
We just need to train it on the right data.
Okay, so we've talked about, all the good stuff. But let's be real for a second. How can we be sure that this AI-generated research is, actually good? Accurate.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Right. We can't just blindly trust a machine to do science for us.
Absolutely not. Human oversight is still super important. Scientists need to, carefully check AI's work, make sure it's rigorous.
So there's, it's not replacing scientists. It's more it's a tool that scientists can use.
Exactly. Like a really powerful tool, but a tool nonetheless.
And, it's not just about accuracy, it's also about ethics.
Oh, absolutely. We need to be having serious conversations about, the implications of using AI for research, making sure it's being used responsibly.
It's a lot of power comes with a lot of responsibility, right?
Exactly. We can't just ignore those ethical questions.
So, okay, we've talked about how powerful this AI scientist is, but how accessible is it really? Can just anyone use it? Or do you need to be a coding genius?
Well, like I said, the code's open source, but yeah, you do need to have some technical skills, comfort with coding, understanding machine learning concepts.
So it's not exactly downloading an app on your phone.
Right. It's not plug and play. But the researchers have made it pretty user-friendly. There's good documentation, tutorials.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they're trying to make it as accessible as possible.
Well, that's great to hear. Imagine if we could empower, citizen scientists and students with this kind of technology.
I know, right? It could totally change the face of research.
Wow, this is really making me think about the future of science.
Me too. It's exciting and a little bit scary all at the same time.
I know, right?
But what's really cool about this whole thing? The AI scientist, it's not just doing science, it's actually learning from it too.
Learning? What do you mean?
Well, it's this concept called meta-learning. Basically, the AI is learning how to learn.
Whoa, that sounds pretty meta.
Right. It's instead of just being programmed to do one specific thing, it's learning how to adapt and improve on its own.
So it's getting smarter over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By analyzing its own successes and failures, it can figure out what works best, you know? It could even come up with entirely new ways of doing research.
So this isn't just like a fancy calculator. It's something that's constantly evolving.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so exciting and so, potentially game-changing.
This is wild. We're talking about an AI that's not just mimicking scientists, but maybe even surpassing them.
It's a pretty mind-blowing thought, isn't it?
It really is. But I think we need a moment to, process all of this.
Yeah, I think a break is a good idea.
We'll be back soon for the final part of our deep dive to talk more about what this all means for the future of human-AI collaboration.
Stay tuned.
Okay, welcome back to the show. So we've spent, 2 whole episodes now talking about this crazy AI scientist.
It really is something, isn't it? All this talk about algorithms and papers and stuff.
I know, right? But it's got me thinking, we haven't really talked about the human side of science,
Oh, absolutely. Science is about so much more than just crunching numbers and collecting data.
Exactly. It's about curiosity and creativity and that intuition that leads to, those big breakthroughs.
That spark of inspiration, that aha moment.
Yeah. And if AI is just, learning from data that we give it, can it ever really have that? Can it think outside the box?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing for AI to master a specific task or even a whole field.
Right.
But to truly be creative, to come up with something genuinely new, that's a whole other level.
So, are we saying that AI can never be truly creative?
I wouldn't go that far. I think there's definitely potential there. One idea that's being explored is to give AI systems more experience with, the real world,
So, not just feeding it data from a textbook.
Yeah.
But letting it, interact with the world experiment.
Yeah. Exactly. Give it access to different senses, like sight and touch. The more it experiences, the more it can learn, and the more it can potentially, develop its own intuition.
Interesting.
Who knows? Maybe one day we'll have AI scientists running around in labs making their own discoveries.
Okay, so let's say we, solve that creativity problem.
Right.
What about those other, human skills that are so important in science, collaboration, communication, explaining things clearly?
Those are all crucial, for sure. But, AI is making progress in those areas, too. Look at how good AI is getting at generating text, translating languages,
Sure.
even creating, images and videos. It's not a stretch to imagine an AI that could not only do the research, but also communicate its findings in a way that, anyone could understand.
Oh, wow. So, no more boring, jargon-filled research papers.
Exactly. Imagine an AI that could, give a TED Talk on its latest discovery, or write a blog post that explains complex concepts in a fun, engaging way.
I would definitely read that blog.
Right. It could revolutionize science communication, making it accessible to a much wider audience.
It's like we're talking about a future where science is for everyone, not just for, the scientists in their ivory towers,
I love that idea. Science for everyone.
So, as we, wrap up this whole deep dive, what's, the one thing you hope our listeners will, take away from all of this?
I think the key message is that the AI scientist, it's just the beginning. We're at the very start of something big here.
Yeah. It's both exciting and a little bit scary, right?
Definitely. But it's important to remember that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for, not so good.
It all comes down to how we choose to use it.
Exactly. It's our responsibility to ensure that AI is used for the benefit of humanity, to make the world a better place.
And to, continue pushing the boundaries of scientific discovery.
Absolutely. Who knows what amazing discoveries await us in this new age of AI-powered science.
It's an incredible time to be alive, that's for sure.
It really is.
Well, that about wraps it up for our deep dive into the AI scientist. Thanks for listening.
And thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation.